Okay guys, so today what we're doing is looking at digital photography and Photoshop basics. Just some real simple basic stuff to kind of get you started. First thing you need to know is what is a pixel. Most of you probably already know this, but if you don't, pixel is just the smallest unit in a digital image. I grew up in the 8-bit era, so all my video games were made out of very simple pixels. Oftentimes they needed to break down a complex image and make it out of, like, say, 24 pixels or something, a very small number. So like this heart, for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 across, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up and down. 7 times 8 is, what is that, 56, I think. So yeah, hey, math, yay. Okay, I won. So 56 pixels to make that heart. Now they look pretty terrible up close, but if you were to zoom back quite a bit, you would definitely see that as a heart. Smallest unit of a digital image. Image resolution is something that most people don't really understand and struggle with sometimes, because I see so many, even like sometimes I see it in like actual newspapers, magazines, printed material, images that look like this one on the right. If you're far enough away, you can't even really tell a difference, but if you get closer, they look really, really, really different. One is 300 dots per inch, the other one is 72 dots per inch. So image resolution is the amount of detail an image holds, its total number of pixels. So like our heart was only like 7 dots per inch. You know, if you created that heart, if that heart was 1 inch, it would be 7 dots per inch. So even 72 dots per inch here is looks pretty bad when you blow it up enough, but 300 dots per inch looks nice and detailed. We usually measure resolution W times H. Know what W times H is? W times H.
Width times height.
Width times height. You getting that, Alex? Okay. File formats. When you save images, there's lots and lots of different ways you can save your images. There's JPEGs, there's PNGs, and there's PSDs, and there's lots and lots and lots of others. There's TIFFs, there's BMP for bitmap, there's GIF for GIF. I mean, there are many, many, many different types of file formats for just images. The JPEG is the one that we're going to be sticking with because that's just the standard. That's what everybody pretty much uses online. It saves really high qualities images, but the problem with JPEGs is that there are no layers or no transparent images, no transparent areas. So it's always going to be a solid square. Like if you download, say, like a logo and it's like all white, but the logo is dark in the middle, that white space is still going to be white space. But if you downloaded a PNG, that can have transparent areas. So the logo could be, the white space would actually be empty. It would be transparent. And then if you paste it, you don't have to remove that white space if you want to show around it. And we'll look at examples of that later. And PSD is the Photoshop format. Photoshop format is huge. It saves lots and lots and lots of data, all your layers, all your adjustments. But the Photoshop format is not very usable to other places. Like if you upload a Photoshop format to Classroom to turn it in, I can't grade it unless I download it, open it in Photoshop. It's super annoying because it takes a lot of time and I don't want to do that. So you guys need to make sure that when you're saving something for publication to put on, like, say, Facebook or to put on Instagram or to put on, or to whatever, you're going to save that as a JPEG or maybe a PNG. If you're saving something to continue working on or to work on later, you'll use PSD, the Photoshop format. So layers. Does that make sense to you guys, the idea of layers?
Yeah, I use that.
I think a lot of you guys already kind of understand this. This is pretty simple stuff right here when you're working with Photoshop. Individual layers are individual levels that can be stacked. They're transparent. Each layer can hold an image, graphics, or adjustments. So I got Photoshop open here. I'm going to switch over to Photoshop really quick. So this is a composite image that I put together for an example for another class. Over here on the right, these are all different layers. Each layer, think about it as like a piece of clear plastic that you can have drawings on, you could have adjustments. Layers can be just all kinds of different things. So for example, I've got a layer that's labeled boot. If I click the eyeball beside it, it's gone. It's not there anymore. So different layers can be turned on and off with the eyeball where you can see them or not see them. And one of the great things about layers is that you can move them around, put them in different places. So there's that guy. I don't know if that layer, okay, so I made a separate layer for the deer, and I made a separate layer for the deer's shadow, which could go here. The shadow behind the deer like this. Yeah. Or, you know, we can resize individual layers. So the shadow could be really large, could be massive like that, bizarre. So, okay, individual layers. And I'll undo all that. Oh, oops, there we go. Okay, so going back here to our information. Boop. Graphics, images, adjustments. Filters. Now, filters are part of Photoshop, and they can make big changes to your image. They can also make small changes to your image. So filters have, there's many, many different kinds. This one looks like it has no filter on it. This one looks like it's used some kind of filter to kind of give it a sort of almost look of a drawing. I forgot the name of this one. I think it's called Neon Edges or something, but it tries to find the edges and turn them into bright neon colors. And this one's called Mosaic, so it tries to turn it into like a tile mosaic. And filters there's lots and lots of different filters, but they just make changes to the layer. They can sharpen, they can blur, and you'll find those in Photoshop where it says filter at the top. And there's tons of different filters in here, and you can get more online. There's packages you can add for filters to get more, you know, advanced stuff than what even comes with Photoshop. Okay. Oops. Back to present. A mask. So in Photoshop, masking is where you're going to change a layer so that it's not visible. Basically, you're covering up a layer. So for a long, long time when I used Photoshop, I never really used masks because I didn't understand what they were for. I didn't see the reason for them. And I'm going to show you the difference between a mask and not masking. So I'll go back here. So like a lot of times, like let's say if I was working in Photoshop and I decided that I'm going to go to my boot here, and I decided I wanted to get rid of part of the boot for whatever reason. I didn't like part of the boot. Then I would use my eraser tool and I would just erase the part of the boot I wanted to get rid of. Give me a better eraser. Okay, so I'd get rid of what I didn't want. Now it's gone. The problem with doing that is that it's gone forever. Once you've erased it, you can undo, but once you make some other changes, you can't undo it anymore. You know what I mean? Like you can only undo backwards, like one step at a time. But like later, let's say maybe I've done a bunch of other stuff to this image, but then I need to get that part of the boot back. Well, it's gone. So what masks are going to do is allow you to modify that without having to erase it. And you go and you add a layer mask. And the layer mask is, and you don't have to know about the details, I'm just kind of showing you what they are because we're going to use them quite a bit. So the layer mask will allow you to paint out areas of an image, but the awesome thing is you're not actually deleting that image. The image is still there. It's just currently being hidden by a layer mask. And then later I can decide I don't want to do that anymore. I can disable the layer mask or turn it off or delete it, and it's still there. So layer masks, once you understand what they are and how easy they are to work with, they're so much better than going in with an eraser and just erasing stuff, because maybe one day you'll want that back. and then you can get it back. So they're a very, very smart thing to use. But I didn't know that for a long time because I didn't have a Photoshop teacher. I just learned this on my own. So in this case, the image is showing you the layer mask has been used to like erase a person or to hide a person. And yeah, so a mask is something that can be added to a layer. You can paint on it. Where a mask is white, the layer is allowed to be viewed. Where a mask is black, the layer is blocked. And you can also use different shades of gray for transparency. So like if you use 50% gray, then 50% of the layer is allowed to be seen. Okay, final word, non-destructive editing. So making changes to an image that are not permanent. And non-destructive editing is really smart because later you might want to go back and do something different, but if you haven't done non-destructive editing, then you can't. It's already been changed. And you can't necessarily go back to the way it was. So non-destructive editing is stuff like I just showed you. I didn't actually erase the boot. I just hid it so I can get it back later if I want it. You know, if I decide that I don't want a layer to be seen, I can, you know, instead delete the layer. I could say just, you know, if I decide I didn't want this here, I could just turn it off, instead delete the layer, and then maybe later I want it back. I can turn it back on. So any kind of choice you could make to keep your image from being, you know, removing information is called non-destructive, or changing information permanently. All right, so that's just some basic stuff about Photoshop. This is, I think actually there is one more word. I forgot about this last one, and let me bring it back and get to that last word. So, composite images. An image that is created with visual elements from different images. So one of my favorite things to do with Photoshop is create composite images because it's great for that. Photoshop lets you work in layers and blend things together in really cool ways. So composite images have multiple different parts of photos, graphics, different things connected together. So here's an example of a cool, I think a pretty cool way to use a composite image. Took this dude from, I don't know, parade or something, looks like a Spartan, and put him in an appropriate background, and all of a sudden you've got a Spartan. Now here's a key, I wonder if this guy even knows this has ever been done to him. You know, it's one of the interesting things about, you know, you put your image on line, and or somebody puts your image online and it's there. Who knows where somebody hasn't like searched it and took it and done something to it like this, and you wouldn't even know it. I always think that's really interesting. But yeah, so that's the composite image, and that's a fairly simple composite image. I mean, all they really had to do was outline this guy, copy him, paste him onto this paper, and then they've done one. Can you see something else that they've done to change him a little bit? To kind of make it work better?
The shading on him.
Yeah, his, it's not really, it's kind of shading. It's more, I don't think they've really changed the shading very much, but they've changed his lighting, his colors. Like, this is all like really warm glow colors, so they've kind of changed his colors so they kind of match that background. So, oh yeah, we do an assignment on color grading. Modifying the colors of an image to create an artistic effect. Color grading is taking something like this dude and applying more yellowish, warm colors to him to get him to match, and there's lots of different ways to do color grading. All right, so that's the basics right now. That's where we'll stop for this information. Really, really hope you guys can understand image resolution and pixels. And where you can really get a good grasp of image resolution and pixels is when you get into a situation where you're looking for like reference images or something you might use in a composite. So let's say you wanted a background. Give me a place, anyone? A place to search for. Where? Eiffel Tower. Let's say I want to use the Eiffel Tower in the background of an image. So I search for Eiffel Tower. I go to images. Okay, so I don't know how big these images are, but if I click on them, it should right here. It's kind of tricky. It's kind of hard to find. But if I click on it and look right here, I get a number. You guys you've probably seen this before. And this one's 2,900 by 5,367. That is a very large photograph. that means it's going to have really high resolution, and that image is going to work really well. I'm going to have a lot of detail. Now let's see if I can find a low resolution one. That's 19, that's good. 6,000 by 4,000, that's big. Everyone I'm finding so far. A lot of times I search and I have trouble finding actually decent resolution images. Most of the time I find these really low resolution images, and then they don't look as good. So, all right, so here's one that's fairly low. It's not even that bad. I'm going to copy this one and paste it into Photoshop. And we'll zoom in and we'll look at the Eiffel Tower. Okay, there's the detail in that one. Now let's go back over here and let's get this one, the huge one. I'm going to copy that one, paste it into Photoshop, and let's zoom in and look at the detail on that one. So look at that. I can actually see the windows in this interior building, this like restaurant or something inside the Eiffel Tower here. That's way more resolution. I go back to this one, and I mean, I don't even know where that is. Is that here? That's that right there. That's the same spot in Eiffel Tower. So that's the difference between low resolution, high resolution. This one has about 5 times more data, 5 times more detail than the other one. You can look up here, you can actually see individual like antennas sticking off, and we go up this one, and you don't see any of that stuff. It's just there's not enough resolution there. So image resolution, guys, that is super important. You guys kind of start understanding it, because if you're working on composites and you start mixing different image resolutions together, it looks really bad. Okay, I'm gonna stop.